Hello and welcome to another episode of Geared Toward Gear. My name's Sean and I'm so glad you're here. Today we're looking at a mystery CRKT. What could it be? Obviously you know what it is because you can read words and you can see the thumbnail. This is the Caligo, that's what I'm calling it, in D2 steel. So this model was released in 2019, I believe, in 8CR13 MOV steel, and recently BladeHQ released an exclusive version in D2, and that's what we have here. Exclusives, I've kind of talked about in the past. Not a huge fan of exclusives. I like consumers to be able to get what they want, and if these things sell out and they don't make them again, or somebody wants one and can't get it, then I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of exclusives. I get it. I get why they do it, but anyway, beside the point. So CRKT Caligo in D2 steel from BladeHQ. Price point $45. So the standard version in 8CR13 steel is going to cost you about $40. So for $5 more, you can get the D2 version, which is why I decided to pull the trigger on this one. And I'm not really sure why I did, because this is not my style, generally speaking, in terms of the kind of black on black look. The overall design, the silhouette, the blade shape, all of that spoke to me, and the price point was good. But the blacked out thing is just not really me. And you guys probably know that at this point, but I figured I'm going to give it a try, test it out, review it for you guys, and see what it could do. So, as I said, $45 on BladeHQ. The blade shape, as you can see, is a drop point design. It's got a swedge up top, and it's a hollow grind. It's coated somehow, I imagine some sort of a paint. I'm not sure how long this will last with use, but that's what we're looking at for the blade. The thickness on the blade is 0.12 inches, which is pretty standard for kind of an EDC blade thickness. The blade length is 3.125 inches, so a decent blade length there for EDC, I think. It also does have a sharpening choil. We look down here at the base, so it shouldn't be too difficult to sharpen, although D2 is a pretty hard steel, so it takes a little bit of work, but that's what we're looking at as far as the blade is concerned. And I do like the shape. Again, that's kind of what spoke to me, was the just kind of classic drop point, which I like. The handle is aluminum, and it's a slick aluminum. It's not grippy at all, really. No real texture to speak of. So a pretty slick aluminum handle, which again, probably not a huge issue for kind of light duty EDC stuff. But just be aware that it's quite slick. Not a ton of grip there, and it's 4.5 inches in length. So our overall length here, and I don't have it written down, but we'll measure it real quick, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7.5, 7.75, somewhere in there. So a full-size knife. For my extra large hands, I can get just about my entire hand on it. So I think it's a good size for EDC, kind of a medium large, I guess is what I would call it. It does have what appears to be, from looking, and I could be wrong here, so correct me if you own this knife and if you're aware, on the non-liner side, from the description on BladeHQ and from what I can see looking in there, it looks like there is a nested stainless steel liner that's black in color on this side of the handle, which wouldn't really make sense to me to have that on an aluminum handle. Obviously there is a liner on the liner lock side to accept that liner lock, but why there would be one on this side, I'm not quite sure. But it is what it is. So that's the handle, kind of a slick aluminum, 4.5 inches long, and it has some liners, I'm pretty sure. Let's talk about the action. Actually, before that, let's talk about the weight. So I'm big time now. I bought a scale, and I feel like the scale that I bought is what like a drug dealer would use. So if you're watching this and you're a drug dealer, let me know if this is what the scale that you use. 3.53, so just over 3.5 ounces. I'm kidding, of course. I know none of you are drug dealers, but maybe I should have got a larger scale, because I feel like with some things this might be too small, but we don't need to talk about the scale. We're here to talk about the knife. So a little over 3.5 ounces, so a good weight. I think, not too heavy, not too light. The action is going to be ball bearings, so it's going to have their IKBS. You got that little logo right there. So the action is very smooth, incredibly smooth, as you would expect on ball bearings, especially the IKBS. They do a pretty good job with those. So very, very smooth, no complaints with the action. It's a manual flipper, as you saw. There is a little bit of jimping on the flipper tab itself on the top there. Come on, focus. There we go. So just a couple little runs of jimping there. It does give you a little texture, but we're going to talk about the flipping action and the detent here in a minute. I'm going to kind of save that for the end. The lockup is extraordinarily strong. Zero play in any direction. It's very, very strong. It's a liner lock, and it's locking up at probably 30, maybe 35%, something like that. So good lockup. The pocket clip is a loop over design. It's not deep carry, but it's good. It goes in and out of the pocket just fine. No complaints there. I've said it 1,000 times. I don't need everything to be deep carry, like true deep carry. I do like it, but I'm totally fine with this clip. No complaints. The actual hardware is recessed, as you can see. So in and out of the pocket, super easy, especially with that kind of slick aluminum handle there. As far as positioning on the pocket clip, it is for tip up right hand only. So it's a one position clip. So if you're a lefty, you're kind of out of luck. And if you're a weirdo that likes to carry tip down, I'm kidding, of course. If that's your thing, it's totally cool. But it's just one position, tip up right hand. So just be mindful of that if you're looking at this knife. Fit and finish wise, it's good. It's not outstanding. The centering is good. It's basically perfect. And this is after a decent amount of use, about a week's worth. The back spacer, and it's kind of a partial back spacer. You've got a little bit of flow through here. The aluminum back spacer is pretty much flush. You can feel a little bit of a ridge there, but for 45 bucks, I wouldn't expect perfection. So no real problems with the fit and finish, other than the aluminum itself as far as the coating that they've put on it. I'm just not sure how it will hold up long term. And if we look in a couple places, if I can get up close enough, like right here, you'll see it started to wear off a little bit. I think there's some on this side, like a little spot right there. There's probably 4 or 5 areas where it's already started to wear off just a little bit. And it was clean and solid black when I got it. And with kind of minor to moderate use over the course of 1 week, it started to wear in a few places. So I have a feeling the long term, this finish is not going to hold up, probably. I could be wrong. Let me know if you have one of these, or maybe you've had one of the 8CR versions for a long time. Let me know how that finish is held up, because I'm just not getting a warm and fuzzy that is going to hold up long term. The texture I already talked about on the handles is pretty slick. There's a little bit of jimping, as we saw earlier on the spine of the blade. It's moderately functional, not terribly functional, but again, for an EDC knife where you're going to be opening boxes and things like that, you're not going to lose your grip. I mean, it's not, the fact that there's not more texturing isn't a problem for me. I do like the texturing on the liner lock itself. It makes that very easy to get in there and disengage. Tiny bit of texturing on the back spacer, not very functional, but it's there. So overall, it's a pretty slick knife, but I didn't have any problems with it at all. So that's what it is as far as texture. So let's talk about the action and the detent. That's where this thing has kind of failed. The detent was not super strong, but it was okay when I got the knife. After about a week of carrying it and using it, the detent has weakened further and further almost every day, to the point where now, I mean, it takes very little effort to break the detent. I mean, very little effort. And if I shake it with kind of medium force, it's not going to come out. But if I shake it pretty hard, it's going to whip open. So that's not fantastic, right? I prefer a pretty strong detent. If you watch my Gerber fastball video, that knife has a very, very strong detent. As a matter of fact, a lot of people would say too strong, but it's a pretty weak detent is what I'm saying. And it has weakened since I've had the knife. And so that could be a concern as far as longevity, that the detent could just go completely. As a matter of fact, my buddy JB over at Big Red EDC was just talking to me about, and he put it on Instagram, I think. He had a honey badger knife that had a similar issue where the detent just went away, like completely, where it was just free floating with nothing holding the blade in. And the detent on this has just become very, very weak. If you can kind of hear and watch it suck in, it's very weak. I mean, yeah. So it's not a huge issue for, again, just very light duty EDC stuff. It's not going to open in your pocket. You know, it stays in there. But if you try hard enough, you can just whip it out and overcome that detent. So could be an issue long term. So a little concerning there. So my overall take is that it's a good design. Aesthetically, it looks nice, especially if you're into kind of black on black. I like the little pop of color there with the blue collar around the pivot screw. It's comfortable. It cuts very well. The D2 was nice and sharp right out of the box. But my concerns are with longevity, both with the finish on the aluminum and the detent. So those are kind of the two unknowns that I can't really account for at this point. And if I do hang on to this knife, I may do a follow-up in the future. But again, I would be interested to hear if you own this knife or have owned one for a while, what your experience has been. So let's do a quick cut test and see how this D2 is held up. I did a bunch of cardboard and cordage and kind of the standard stuff that I do to kind of test a blade, plus just EDC stuff, opening packages and stuff like that. So let's see if the D2 will still cut. Yeah, still plenty sharp. Very serviceable. Not that a paper cut test is the end-all be-all test of a knife's sharpness, but it definitely slices still quite nicely after about a week of use. So that is the CRKT Caligo in D2 from BladeHQ. I'll leave a link to BladeHQ where you can pick one up if you're interested. But again, my concerns are more on the quality control. And I may have just gotten a bad example. So if you have one of these and your detent kicks ass and your finish is held up, let me know. I may have just got a poor example, which would still be a problem, right? If the QC is not up to par. So it's good. It's not great. Is it serviceable as an EDC blade? Sure. I mean, totally. You could totally carry this and use it every day and probably not have any issues, but I just wouldn't hard use it because I think that detent may eventually fail. And I did tighten up the pivot screw quite a bit to try to kind of keep the blade in even more, and it didn't help. I mean, I got it to the point where it would still flip, but it still just had that super weak detent. So the detent game is not strong with this one, and that's it. That's the CRKT Caligo. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I appreciate it as always, and I will talk to you soon.